Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome into the channel if it's your first time here. I'm Aurelia, and today we are going to be doing a comprehensive deep dive into the entire Five Nights at Freddy's history, lore, and timeline for the very first time. Never thought I'd be saying that sentence in my life, but here we are. It has been a decade since this game came out. This game came out when I was still in high school. I was obsessed with Markiplier at the time, and so I watched the original first few games that he played. It's been 10 years, so I didn't really remember a thing about them, and the lore was the last of my concerns. I was mostly just excited about his reactions to it, so here I am, 10 years later. I actually sat down and played these games because I'm currently deployed with the military, and I was like, with the small amounts of free time that I have, why don't I pick up a new hobby? Let's get into studying Five Nights at Freddy's a little bit. It can't be that complicated. This shit is like a gaming bible, so I personally just played the first four, so FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4, Sister Location, and the Pizzeria Simulator, which I didn't even know those existed. So now I'm at the point where we have the main games, like the original games under our belt, which included some mini games as well. We started seeing a lot more dark tropes coming out. At first it's hee hee ha ha, there's some animatronics that come alive at night, and then we get to like this purple guy who's like killing children and killing the animatronics or something. And then there's this name that came up a couple times in the last couple games, Elizabeth, and like a father-daughter thing. So there's some other shit going on, point blank. I don't even want to put any of my theories out there because y'all know way better than I do. This shit has been studied. I'm at the point where I'm pretty sure there has to be like a college class or two on Five Nights at Freddy's. So to clear things up for myself, I am watching a video made by the game theorists called Game Theory FNAF The Ultimate Timeline. We'll see how I feel after it. I'm going in completely blind. I don't know what to expect, so I thought maybe 20 minutes should be good. I did just mention that there should be college classes probably on this, but it's fine. I'm fine. We're gonna start with a 20-minute video and see how confused I am afterwards. But yeah, I'm super excited. I love diving into new things, so we're going to be watching this video. I'm going to be pausing it along the way. I'm not just going to sit here and nod silently. So if you're expecting me to not yap and not pause the video, then you're kind of in the wrong place. I'm a yapper. I want to unpack it because otherwise I'm just going to watch the video, and much like things that I have learned in classes, I will just drool and dump it, forget about it, and never think about it again. This is my first time looking at the lore for literally anything. Anything. I've never finished a game or read a series and been like, oh, what's the lore behind this on YouTube? Normally I kind of understand what the gist is. This, however, needs some work. Anyways, I have an energy drink. I am ready for chaos and some lore deep diving. I hope you are too. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games.
There's books?
8 whole years.
There's 11 games?
This moment. The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally
I've played
complete.
like, what, 6?
The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy.
Oh, this is the Sister Location. I don't know what that is. That's the burning down of the pizzeria. I think this is also the pizzeria stage. Don't know what that is. That's the puppet.
Jealousy and loss.
Newspaper clipping. Don't know what that is. And that's purple guy and the discombobulated animatronics.
Together.
Jealousy.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life.
Oh
this
my
one
God.
is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kind of nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018, back in the days when
my
Mike was the
God.
crime crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise,
Who's
and
Afton?
Phasgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter.
What is
But since the last
Phasgoo?
time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, a
I did
death
not
and
play those.
revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is
what?
exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theory, so to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline.
Like, when I emphasize I've never had to look up lore, I watched all of the Lord of the Rings movies, and sure there were bits and blobs where I was like, huh, is that what that is? And then it would just be answered for the most part, and I did not feel confused watching the Lord of the Rings movies, with the exception of like a couple questions here and there. This is just crazy. The things he just said to me, I did not just play 6 games to be confused. We are learning this. We are locked in.
But just before
Who's
I do, I
Afton?
just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This
What?
thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation of Freddy's, how the business started and how it came into being, the
Chuck E.
Afton
Cheese.
era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF. Everything that happens after
Oh.
the Pizzeria Simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of nowhere, as well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm going to merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best, most satisfying, most complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know
Birth?
exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So
Oh
sit
my
back,
God.
grab some popcorn or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to
I
want to
will
come
subscribe.
back to a few times in order to fully dissect.
Oh god. So first of all, this was already like really enticing. I have never watched any of these videos because like I said, I'm not a big lore gal. I just kind of play things and have a good time. I never want video games to really feel like work, but I am just so interested in what is going on and pleasantly surprised so far with the delivery. I feel like this is going to be something I can really sit down and actually absorb. Also, the whole 3 timelines thing, is this going to be a video about the 1 timeline and then there's going to be more videos about 3 separate eras? We're just gonna start with this one.
Waiting,
I don't
present
know.
to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Oh, that sound.
Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression. People were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, 4th highest unemployment in the nation and full of
Wow.
transients. People
Oh,
looking
he
for
cited
work in
his
Salt Lake,
sources.
finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits: a simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were
Security
plastered
breach.
all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the Vaughn Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell
This
for
is
just
so
a mere
well made.
50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William. William Afton. The bear could dance. He could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough, with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story.
Oh, no.
It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do: make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic. Magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure.
The
He also
silver
looked upon this
eyes.
man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on.
Pizzeria.
That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fredbear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots.
What timeline
Eventually,
is
his
this? What
restaurant
time is
would
it?
go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult. Another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget.
That was-
1979.
okay.
Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that released, ranging from masks to magnets.
Oh.
Crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre. so they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others, though, would fare much better, like a new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big, it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's
Is the fourth
popularity
game?
would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to the Friends. In
Triggered.
1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear.
Okay, so at this point we've gone through the entire history with like the circus beginnings and then his individual chain and his rival's chain with Chica and then their like merger and going through all these growing pains with all these different animatronics and like characters, but then that all led to the creation of Freddy Fazbear's. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the first game, is not the original location. There were a bunch of other ones before then. That's really interesting. Up to that point. Huh.
Bear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed
Why
over
does she
for
look like
inclusion
that?
in that cartoon
Or
show.
he, or
the
it.
only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter, he had a thriving business, and best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they
2
were
sons
constantly
and a
pushing the limits
daughter?
of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself.
This is so
Thanks to
well
Henry,
made.
he was practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1 of the story. That said, at the end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singing Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the singing show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. It just doesn't make a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singing Show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. The Fredbear Singing Show thing also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of the story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began
What?
as someone with
I
good
don't know him as
intentions
that.
and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap.
What is
The
Glitch
handcrafted
Trap?
suit. You can see the seams and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself.
That's creepy.
There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fred Bear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all.
What
In this whole
the
franchise,
fuck?
only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even
Oh.
Golden Freddy, Fredbear was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now,
Mediocre
I suspected that
melodies.
Mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the
That's
roster.
what they seemed like in
Especially
Pizzeria.
Nedbear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fredbear. And yet there
Yeah.
are 2 key details that we're going to have to justify with any mediocre melodies mentioned. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And 2, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off, Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's
I need that.
relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had
Oh.
this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages,
Oh.
Nedbear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know
Oh.
about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with 2 rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've
God.
gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But
I did
why
not know
would I
that.
call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? Few things actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists.
That's
It is
terrifying.
mentioned in the source code teasing system.
Oh, the
so
source
it is
code.
out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story The Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Nedbear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design
Oh.
just fits better with the theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs.
As a
And
little
with her being
chicken.
the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's
Interesting.
closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in Sister Location, a detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It
She
might
was
also
missing.
explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all of this a big leap? Yeah. Is it
What?
connecting a lot of dots that are very spread out across the franchise that I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years? Absolutely. But I
Dead
think it
kid.
makes sense. It
Why
also
does-
serves as a clean answer to a lot of the random threads that Scott's been leaving dangling for years. So, with all of that in mind, my friends, we can close the book on the foundation of Freddy's. And don't worry, next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation.
Yeah, okay, hold on. I'm gonna preface by saying we are not stopping there. I was under the impression this was a 20-minute entire comprehensive summary of the timeline. It is going to be split into 20-ish minute segments, so this is probably going to take at least an hour. Just gonna put that out there. I don't know why I thought that it could be accomplished in 20 minutes. and I'm not in a rush, I want to know all of the things that I possibly can. Even in this video, obviously these guys, whoever they are who made these videos, are experts on it. They're like offhandedly mentioning, because they've, at this point it sounds like they've made like dozens, oodles and oodles of these videos, so they're offhandedly mentioning names like Afton, oh, and we already know that the kid died, and like all this other stuff. So I'm gonna stay focused and we're gonna continue watching the rest of these because I want to be as well informed as possible. Alright, resume. Oh, right, this one's called Game Theory FNAF Rise of Afton.
7 of the FNAF timeline script. Last time we covered the origins of Freddy's. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life, and the infuriating moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our newest channel. Guys, this is a huge moment for us theorists. For the last decade, we've had this 4-player controller icon, and now we finally fill in the final missing piece. Get ready for the rollout of our newest theorist channel. Drumroll, please. Style Theory, where we're looking at the science, math, psychology, history, and mystery.
The Afton era, oh my gosh.
1983, business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running, Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit, and fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot.
That's what spring suits are.
With kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a foxy mask, and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining?
As an older sibling, I get it.
It wasn't fair. It was time that
I get
he
it.
got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment.
I remember this.
His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements. They'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp. It was just a prank. It was meant to be fun. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, William's son would live again. It would just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's Springlock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow follow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV.
I thought that was a
Her son,
grandpa.
Michael, was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother.
Oh,
stuck inside
shit.
the suit that
Okay.
took his
So that was another mini game that I must have missed, because in Pizzeria I did pull over and I found like Lil J's or some random like restaurant thing, but I did not find the dirt pile, and I don't think I would have known what it is because I didn't even know that this was a guy who had kids. Like I did not know any of this. So let me get this straight. We have Afton, 3 kids and a wife. The grandpa figure in the chair is actually the wife. The youngest kid was the first bite. And only bite that I know of at this time. I'm assuming there's more. But the first bite in the restaurant because his brother was tormenting him. And so now the older brother's messed up, and there's also a daughter. And Afton promised to put him back together. That's what we have so far.
his life. The
Okay.
suit's 3-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The
Yeah, I
words,
saw
"It's
those."
me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's
Oh.
gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him.
Uh-huh.
Fatal death. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. Beautifully awful idea.
Oh no.
This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for
Delulu.
William to do some killing of his own.
Delusional.
Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. And it felt good. He felt free. Years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
He attacked Charlie?
And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled and also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's Family Diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press. to
He just
handle.
killed his
Besides,
daughter?
Freddy Fazbear's was
Am I
still
missing
open,
something?
And it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location. And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. It felt good. He felt free. Years of resentment and
Alright, Googled more lore. I don't know. There's a lot of names being floated around, and I'm honestly bad with names, even if I'm 100% paying attention. But Charlie's last name, in the end of a novel, is revealed that it's Charlie Emily, who was killed by Afton, because it was Henry's daughter. Yeah, it was Charlie, because Afton has crying child, Michael, and Elizabeth. Okay. Just avoiding confusion for myself later. I'm so bad, and all these names are so like normal. Just throw in like a Tyler, why don't you? You know, Sarah. Like,
Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location. And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering, even surpassing it. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of those experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras.
What game is this in?
183. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry got Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision.
Oh,
He could
no.
transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, and terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael
Also
would
his
grow up
son.
not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
His kid?
You hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls. All I see is an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated
What is that
demands
from?
he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's this? I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one
Oh.
William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it
The vampire show. I was wondering, I was like, that's so gimmicky and random, but it was like somewhat of a parallel to his home life and their whole marriage. So she decides to leave because he's, absent from their family. But was Michael his kid? I mean, he's not treating him like his kid. Obviously, he murdered his son, but was he the father of Michael? Legitimately? Because in the show it's implied that he wasn't, but maybe he just disassociated Michael as his son after the incident. And what game is The Bunker?
felt like to be unleashed, what it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985, putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. Never truly forget your first.
What is that from?
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never leave the building.
Susie?
They had to be stuffed inside of the suits. No one maintained those things anyway.
What?
And so Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and Gabriel would come next. But it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all
FNAF the
pretense
Ultimate
was off.
Guide.
He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far. That one he shouldn't have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. New Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had
What?
was circumstantial at best, so he walked away a free man.
What?
Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he
Yeah.
threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How
Oh,
could he protect the
shit.
kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics, toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied
FNAF
to some
2.
kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was... without him? That was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture.
Yeah, because you're a
No,
crazy
as long as
psycho
these
murderer.
restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard. And there it was, buried in the back of parts and services, mixed in with the old withered animatronics, was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore.
So that's why. So we are playing as Afton in FNAF 1 and 2 then? Because in FNAF 1, all the spirits are trying to kill us, and we survive in the suits. And then in FNAF 2, they have facial recognition features for predators specifically. So that's why we put the mask on, because if we were just some normal guy off the street, the animatronics wouldn't try to kill us. Where was Bonnie in FNAF 2? This one.
One of the suits, we had a spare in the back, a yellow one, someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that?
The
following day,
puppet?
the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's Pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Sister
Circus
location?
Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird.
Barnyard
It was back to
bird.
his characters, his creations. Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy. as well as two special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind, Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
The day before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. Scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return
my
to where it all started.
God, this is insane. So, the souls of the old children. Now he's on his murder spree, but he's more curious rather than like bloodthirsty. Well, he is bloodthirsty because he's still killing them, but he also is trying to find out the whole soul thing, and then his daughter gets consumed by one of the animatronics that he created. Also, they're all British. News to me. And Sister Location was found as an experimental site, and then it didn't even end up opening. So who was the security guard playing in Sister Location? Was that just some other random guy? Was that Michael, his son, still playing as the security guard? Is Michael still alive? Does he have any children left? Because Elizabeth is now Circus Baby. Was she trying to protect other children? Because she tried capturing us as the security guard at the end, and capturing our flesh suit, for a lack of a better term, to like possess it. Dude, what?
1993. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but Williams' damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One
I
night,
loved
then
FNAF
another,
2.
then another.
I think that was my favorite
Snuck
one.
into the old broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But he had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one.
That was from one of the stories? I never got a story.
To his own creations. He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton.
What in the Attack on Titan is going on here?
Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it. He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else. Something
Yeah.
mindless and frantic.
The
Perhaps
children
by
you
mixing
murdered.
souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He
What
needed
in the
more
Full
of
Metal
this metal.
Alchemist is
When he
going
searched
on?
the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door. Afton's mind. The
Oh.
scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one.
Yeah,
in
he
the
did
suit.
end up
He
getting
was the
back in
one
his suit.
charge. The spring lock snapped
Yep.
into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. Didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides.
I love their attention to this. He did not have to insert all these details, but the way that he weaved this, like the creators of these videos, huge props to the Game Theorists. I am now a huge fan of this channel. Did not know they existed before, but now I am going to be binge watching their videos because they are weaving this together beautifully, like a freaking movie, like a tale. They're adding all of these like unnecessary but crucial little details that make the story come to life. Like they could have just been like, the bite was this time, this is what happened, blah blah blah, but they're truly storytelling and narrating it. I'm obsessed. This is so freaking cool.
All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned.
Where was this? What part of this?
To inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this.
Oh.
Taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there
That's from the
Afton
third
would
game.
sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind walls with an iron will that refused to die.
30
End of
years?
this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point, and the episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and reestablished time
Whoa.
and time again by the games. That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close, because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares to scare.
So she died first? Does that imply the sister location was around before Fazbear's Pizza? Like, did he open his own spin-off location previously? Because that's when the timelines start getting a little bit confusing. Because he designed that location to be like a testing site, right? And then she visited him, and then the grand opening was canxed. So like, or canceled rather. Sorry, military. Okay, and then the nightmares, and that's why he tormented his other two sons?
Scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location.
Oh. Funtime Foxy as Mangle in the... Let me repeat that again. I did not see that.
It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy
Funtime Foxy
appearing as as Mangle.
As
in the Fnaf
Mangle.
location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why
Right.
would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point,
That's my
it just
question.
has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work. Hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons.
Motherfucker never talked to me, I swear to God.
Various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap. Ooh, when you put it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts. Ugh, we'll see. Anyway, until then, my Faz heads.
Faz heads. Okay, so at this point, we already know that he has the 3 kids. We find out that one of the kids, Elizabeth, the girl, was eaten by Circus Baby. She inhabits Circus Baby, becomes Circus Baby to an extent, and at the same time, Homeboy is experimenting with animatronics. Also, he ends up dismantling the original ones, boiling them down or melting them down, and then creating spinal fluid for anime enjoyers and bringing them to life. So that's how we get these like cursed fluid advanced contraptions that are just like killing machines at this point. And yeah, there's a little bit of discrepancy with the timelines as established per the end, but overall I'm really locked in. I just grabbed some snacks. I have the rest of my energy drink and Sour Patch Kids, so I'm good to go. We're locking in, baby. Let's go to part 3. And with that, we are on Game Theory FNAF Burn Them All.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory and page 20 of our final FNAF timeline. This is getting ridiculous. Last time we covered William Afton's rise as a serial killer, how the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drinks. One
I
night,
wanna
in a
know
fit
more
of
about the
rage, he
mime.
lashes out against Henry's young daughter Charlie, his first murder. This
Dinner of
moment becomes
Champions.
the first domino to fall in a long sequence of events that ultimately destroys William's life and the lives of those around him. That one murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to Remnant and the potential solution for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices. Robots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation and collection of more Remnant. Except there
Remnant.
was one thing that he didn't account for, his daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children to put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for, though, were the ghosts, forcing him to pay for the sins of his past. When last we left him, William was
They're so
strangled,
sad.
leading to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video. Today we're finishing up chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton.
How did
Over the
they
next 6
get him
pages,
from
we
the
switch our
secret
focus
wall?
to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the fallout of a
Oh.
stupid childhood decision with tragic consequences. A young man whose life is best described as collateral damage, caught in the blast radius of William's.
Poor Michael. Yeah, so the ghost children, super sad drawing, by the way. Like, the fact that he was able, it reminds me of, I know these are like kind of in lockstep because they were around the same era, but like the Undertale franchise, and how such simplistic drawings, I mean, not simplistic, but 8-bit drawings that compared to like today's tech, even, I mean, during 2014 or 15, some GOAT video games, they're able to portray so much with their sound choices, their writing styles, and their just character design and drawing style as well. We're able to get so much out of those small little mini games. Granted, I didn't pick up on all of the tiny details, but even just playing as it, you're just like, holy shit, because you know the whole human going into the trap and then dying and then the kid getting killed, and there's a lot of like subtleties that you can just feel from something that's so simple, and I think that's what caused such a revelation. It caused such a phenomenon across the world with this game.
Whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just rip off the band-aid now. We won't be finishing the timeline today. I know. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I wanted
so
to,
4
but covering
videos.
FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach wound up taking me an additional 9 pages of script. And I've already made you wait long enough for this part, so I just had to make the executive call to break this one up into 2. Don't worry, that part is already written, it is already recorded, it is just in the process of being edited. It is a hefty episode. So mark it on your calendar. That one's actually going to be going live on March 25th. It's also coming complete with a live. That one should be a lot of fun. Fair warning, though, the conclusions we've reached that solve Security Breach, whew, they are controversial. I feel good about them. Like, I think that we've locked in on a lot of the answers here, but, they're gonna raise a lot of discussion. Let's just say that you're either gonna love that episode or hate it.
Oh, boy.
I don't really think there's gonna be much in between on that one. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike.
At this certain point in time, I am not planning on playing Help Wanted, the VR, AR, Security Breach games. I know those are like really high quality, but I am playing on my potato gaming laptop, and I just simply do not have the time to play them out here deployed. I'm actually wrapping things up soon, and I wanted to do something special for you all before I leave so that these would upload in October for the fall season. I was mostly thinking about you guys, but I also was very curious about no one asked me to play these. I myself wanted to, because it's just something that I hear about all the time and everyone knows about, so I made the decision to. But that being said, do not have the time to play the longer games. However, I am planning on playing Into the Pit, so I will make up for it by watching all of the lore, summarizing those games. Maybe I'll go back and play them sometime just so I can get the full story and the full experience. But we will be watching all the lore, and then I'll play Into the Pit, which should be the newest installment of the series. So
William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it. But as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the two of them.
You'd
They were
think.
united by a name and a shared pain. This time, though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty
Fazbear's
set of
Frights?
shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet, here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, a prideful, sad, angry man with petty everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with a strange stranger this entire time. His father had secrets. Suddenly, the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here, though?
Is this sister
Circus
location?
Baby's Entertainment and Rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for Father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, Father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his work. Clearly, the
What?
entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to
Oh my fucking god. This is actually insane. The entire time I was playing Sister Location, in my mind, and I think even out loud, I might have said it a couple times, why is this the way that it is? I don't think any normal, sane person playing that game didn't ask that out loud. I don't know. I haven't seen any playthroughs, but hopefully every sane person came to question, why the fuck are we crawling through vents? Who designed this place? I think I verbatim said they need to be fired because in order to get to the security room, you have to crawl through the exhibits where the things can kill you. The whole Foxy scene, the whole ballerina scene. I was like, why is this some subterranean vessel? Like, what? Who would ever have a children's birthday party here? Wow. Wow. My mind is blown. I am actually so impressed right now.
His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby. His father's pride.
Michael
and
found her?
Except something was different about her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Will you help me?
Was this his sister? William's baby girl? But how? Why? What was this place? He dug around some old files and found blueprints outlining the features of these animatronics. Storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow been the prime...
Bro, I feel like I need to go back and watch more lore videos on all the games and all of their Easter eggs because I did not glean any of the like secret lore connections. I mean, I also didn't even know that there was a guy in kids. I had no idea about any of this, so I can't really blame myself. Like, even if I did discover some schematics, I would have been like, whoa, that's crazy, and I would have no idea what was going on. So, scratch that. But, what the I feel like I need to, like, oh no. This is gonna be a whole rabbit hole, isn't it?
Suspect in all of it. Suddenly, Michael's mind flashed back to his persistent nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster, toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context. Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of it.
Oh my god. At the end of are we playing as, how many games are we playing as William for? All of them? Or at this point, is this when she takes over William's body?
If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now
Oh,
empty halls
no.
of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, Finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
You are in the scooping.
Oh no.
The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper? That violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints. Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could infuse new bodies with the soul. William could finally give and take away life. The only thing he needed were the bodies.
Oh my
But William
God.
wasn't the only one looking for bodies, as Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you,
This is so well edited.
then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him. Another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not.
For the
What?
next several months, Michael's life was not his own. He was forced to comply with the tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst as day by day, week by week, his
Was this in a
flesh began
game?
to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse, alive but wishing he wasn't.
Was this
He
in
was
a
puppet,
game?
a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do.
Robot
the entity
spaghetti.
in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had
Sister's
killed and
location.
captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else
Oh.
could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way, no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift.
Okay, I was like, where is that voice from? It's from the Pizzeria Simulator. That's when he's. Yes, that's when he's narrating towards the end.
And all these old shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no one ever really wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in his security logbook. While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed new recruits to their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now,
Oh.
there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy would attack him now. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts. And each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire. The remnant can't survive high temperatures, after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still existed inside seemed like a winning strategy. All this revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares to begin again. Hallucinations that brought him back to his childhood. The guilt around killing his brother. His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father.
Oh my
Little
God.
did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, a new horror attraction inspired by the awful crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza so many years ago. It made Mike sick. He evil looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of
But
tragedy.
he's still in a
Mike
locked
applied for
room.
the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards rarely receive thorough security checks.
Looks
He also
human.
liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they knew.
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
For weeks, there was nothing. But
the third
just as Mike
game.
considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
I hate that sound.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
This finally began. Sure enough, there he was. William inside his iconic golden Bonnie spring-lock suit. Only now it was green and decaying with age. And there they were, a small family of broken men finally reunited. It's been a long time. Mike had
That's
always
why I hate
struggled
this
with the
fucker.
phantoms of his past haunting him. But now, all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria, suddenly sprang to life. Their burned faces haunting him as he tried to keep track of his father on the camera. So it seemed that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else. But there was one that felt different from the others. One that was more than just
The
a
mime?
camera. The security one.
Yeah.
He looked at the cameras at just the right moment. He could see it floating there through the halls. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground. It would seem like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had
Wow.
the sense that his brother was a part of it. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames. It is finished.
Except.
was somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father.
Bro.
Luckily, the solution would present itself later that year. Not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, restaurant ownership, and
Oh,
management.
no.
Something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face
This
of
game.
the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand had been closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit and a wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry, but he'd largely pulled out of the franchise around the time of his father's disappearance.
I bet.
Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best, applied for a franchise and immediately got the job.
Oh, I'm
There was
so
just
curious.
One thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison, a containment vessel, a locked box, meant to trap them all in so they could finally
It
end
was
the
Henry.
madness. It took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man that had once gotten her killed.
God.
He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he didn't move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you, although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be.
That's
You
why.
monsters trapped in the corridors. Be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
And with that, it was over.
That's why he said that. I was sitting there kind of stun locked for a second. I was like, this is awfully profound to be saying to some like mechanical creatures. Also, why just one of them? I don't think I verbalized it, but I was just at that point fed up with the game. I didn't give a shit what happened to those stinky puppets. But oh my god.
Afton Legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box. The flames danced William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments from his past. The pizzeria, the sun's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out into the silence. Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at it, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop! Make it stop! William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take it anymore, everything was quiet again. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them. A group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern brawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where?
That's not Southern.
The one he shouldn't have killed. William thought that. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder. No. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were back. And now they were trying to punish him. To make him suffer like he'd made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. William's will was so strong, his soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free. A person that no one would suspect. Okay, so a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important one as we shift perspectives to Mike and tell his side of the story. And with FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach having so much to explain,
was that
the
the end?
Rush through things by trying to cram it all in here. Don't worry, I know you've all been patient. The final video is happening on March 25th. That is locked. It is getting ready to go. Trust me, I want this thing to be over and done with as much as you. I am not just stretching it out for the views. But before we wrap up for the day, I did want to talk about the big Orville elephant in the room, Mike's quest for revenge. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively, get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and odor. So weird connection between the two of them, right? So now, look at the phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 3. They use models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, meaning whoever is sitting in that security guard chair, Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. And that's not all. Their designs are burnt. It's a weird detail in the game, and it's something that the character encyclopedia repeatedly calls attention to. The burnt texture for these phantom animatronics.
Well, the places did burn down.
So unusual, though? Fazbear Frights is the first time in the franchise that we hear about anything burning down. From that point on in the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and are suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just moved or repurposed in some way. So when did they burn? And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and sister location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from Night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawings in the security logbook. So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not for Michael. So it tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm too much of the theory. In short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative. Mike as our protagonist, and William, his father, as our antagonist. Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is looking to make things right across the rest of the games. In Sister Location, he learns what his father's been up to and realizes what he has to do to correct it. After failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF 6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is just one problem: timing. Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to Sister Location, seen Baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. It's also when he's gonna start to smell, because, you know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And
What
we
is
know
that
he's not
from?
going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made, Freddy's has been closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post-1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're already deconstructed? But more importantly, we see FNAF 2 paychecks with the date 1987. That is way earlier than I think it could be. To be fair, Fritz Smith's pink slip on night 7 doesn't have a date, but it's a bit weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987 and then employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Anyway, just wanted to call that out because I don't have a solid answer for it, and I'd love to see your comments down below. And with that, my friends,
Damn.
this chapter comes to a close.
These are getting spicier and spicier as we're going along. This one particularly talked about like pretty much 5 and 6, and then how they connect to the fires and tracing William's path after all of his father's hooliganry, through being a security guard through the different facilities, and also trying to establish a timeline from when he worked at each location versus like when each location takes place in the chronological timeline to align with the pizzeria ultimately burning down. And then this guy is still not dead. William is still not dead. The Afton guy. Bro, how many times is this guy gonna survive some sort of catastrophic, cataclysmic event? Also, has the creator of these games ever confirmed any of these theories? Has the creator of these games... I know there's like a couple books that have been made just from watching these videos, but is there any definitive lore out for the games? I feel like that's a stupid question, because if there was, then they wouldn't be making all these videos. But is the entirety of the lore or the narrative driven by the fan base? Is it even supposed to make sense? Does the creator of these games even know what's going on, or is he just like making shit up as he goes and hoping that like these people can piece it together, and then he's like, yeah, that sounds like it could work. Like, why isn't the guy included in the encyclopedia, the main dad? Is the dad even talked about anywhere? Like, where do we come up with this idea? Just because he's the purple guy? How do we know? How do we know that they're all siblings? He's not in the encyclopedia. Are the children in the encyclopedia? Is this all made up? Maybe it's just too terrible, it's too traumatizing? Is this even... Anyways, we're back with Game Theory, FNAF, A Family Rebuild.
Internet, welcome to Game Theory, and the final part of my FNAF timeline, where today we're bringing our story to a close by talking about the most complicated and controversial part of the timeline, the part that I've been dreading most of all, the end. The moment where we're finally forced to come to some definitive and difficult answers trying to explain what the heck we were watching in Security Breach.
Oh yeah, Security Breach, all these games, like I said, I have not personally played, and maybe I will play at a later date, but this is where my journey will kind of end before I play Into the Pit, which could change everything, who knows. So this is all brand new information for me. I'm going into all of this completely blind. I did not play these games.
The last 2 episodes have been about death. The death of Afton's family, the deaths of multiple children, the death of the franchise itself as Mike and Henry figuratively and literally burn it all down. Today's episode, though, and the current end of this franchise, is instead all about rebirth, the return of old characters in new forms, and the controversial rebirth of a franchise entering the next era of its story. But before we hop into the timeline, due to scheduling conflicts, I won't be able to have any live talk back after this episode. I know, I promised one, I was really excited about it, but I just couldn't make it weeks with special guests, Tiffany Tab for and a new beginning to our story.
post purple guy.
Fazbear Entertainment was dead.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer a corporate entity.
All debts have been paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of them collateral damage to the man and the bicycle. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone.
I knew I hated
Well,
Springtrap.
all except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeat! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had
What about the
become
daughter?
lost in his work.
Didn't the daughter
She'd watched
get
him
lost
change from
first?
This irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
What is that from?
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the
Okay, pause.
relationship.
So I did some deep diving, and it looks like it is just like known as Bolora's song. I don't remember if I heard it during the game, so I don't know.
There, she largely faded into obscurity, a mystery from William's past, a footnote.
But they did
in his
say that
history. And that was fine for her. She wanted
Ballora
to
is
leave
his
that part of
wife.
her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession, pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too
I love their
unable to
storytelling.
actually see a bigger picture. And now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her time. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together. She would be the one to rebuild this family. To rebuild the pieces of that shattered life. To reclaim the kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something. Collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions.
Oh, no.
It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just
Where is all this written about the mom? Like, where are the clues?
needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, the licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure.
Game theory FNAF, you're going to hate this security breach. Oh.
For smaller businesses that are usually family-owned. The irony was thin. From there, you would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff here and there. But clearly, it wasn't enough. He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers.
Oh,
but to do
God.
that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted mid-sized delivery company DLZ Shipping Solutions to help build replicas replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween.
What?
How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddies for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas. And thus, the Fazbear Funtime service was born.
What?
With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again.
Markiplier.
Someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Was it a sellout? No doubt. It was exactly the sort of thing that William
Was that
would
real
have
or
hated,
fan-made?
but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion. It would
What?
keep people hooked. It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had to offer. And all the while, they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one
She's
problem
just
with
as
this.
evil.
No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud.
Yeah.
to the guy. No one would want to hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like the So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to
Rebranding?
win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhoods. She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
Struggling game developers
Who
were a
said
dime a
that?
dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So she found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. Right mix of desperate and doofus, willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell
Steve.
right in line, as expected.
Oh,
delivering
Steve.
Stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics. But hey, they got the job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy
What?
Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever. Things were going shockingly well. Her takeover and reboot of the franchise was full.
That's what we've been
So
playing?
infused with cash, she built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale.
Right.
He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace for children. A place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family.
What? The
March
fuck?
2035. The first was obvious. The crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology. So that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. Williams' research had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed and process food, making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems. If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical, normal human boy. She worked down in the bowels of the pizza
Bowels of the
life,
pizza
but it
place.
was one thing the building, was another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him, no documentation that she could just download
This is
into his digital
terrifying.
brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days. The family recreated 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition.
This is
But
diabolical.
his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties, all Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt the warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she was working towards. This was what it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was working. She had to keep going. Next was William. If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It's the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation. Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron.
They're really good storytellers, but
The tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far had this brilliant man fallen? It was clear that her work was cut out for her in this one. Afton was practically lifeless. Man may not have been able to die, but it was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements were the top priority. Maybe pulled from their new line of glam rock animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare body parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more importantly, recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit, 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned.
Yeah.
Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious.
He downloaded himself?
Someone who had backup plans to his backup plans. Sure enough, there it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone to test it.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose. This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running.
Help
spreading
wanted?
his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder. Messy. Afton's followers were reluctant, to say the least, but it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure, but she decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant, narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use. She was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He manipulated you. I know your mum. After she lost the custody case, I was supposed to work her.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, a VR game development
What?
company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde,
yeah.
fondness for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all
It's the
over
same.
again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated.
Oh, good.
She would do this. She would be the one to save dear old Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
Oh,
I will
no.
make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure, she fought, fragmenting Afton's code into a series of tapes hidden across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right
For a
way.
second, I was like, with Vanessa, she had her husband and her daughter back. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Not quite. There's some differences.
The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being an Afton and a robot. So
Whoa.
Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ Shipping in the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be Chief Security Officer at the Pizza Place. A true family tradition to don the hat and badge, and all it took was a recommendation from the top as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter, corpse, a robot, human. All that was left was Michael. Poor trouble.
Oh, man.
The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. Well, she knew she needed him to complete the family. Something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted, using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed.
What?
My friends are here, but I can protect you. I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector. But he was there, somewhere inside of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. And just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out. Some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation
Of the corpse.
There, finally,
Now
all
what?
together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited. Happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended. Had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was just wrong with the Pizzaplex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted, possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly way of belonging. Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line?
We never learned about the puppet.
After all, the Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits, but it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the security puppet from generations ago. The very foundations of this place, the materials and wires that constituted it were rebelling against her, against
Good.
the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together.
Burn it
She
down.
was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. Maybe they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls, stealing pieces and parts of the old animatronics showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed, one of positive emotions and the other created from anguish, anger, agony. Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history, a collection of the hatred still housed inside
Would
these
the children be
defunct
pure
endoskeletons and exosuits.
white
As long
remnant?
as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly. Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory should have been her biggest concern. That bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders, requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night. Destiny malfunctioned live on stage, almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuild small Lori. Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him. But she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. Bit by bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As her carefully created world crumbled around her one more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin. And there you have it, my friends. Nearly a decade in the making, my FNAF timeline for where the franchise is here in 2023. Year of Fazbear Frights, by the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out. I think we can all agree that this part of the timeline was always going to be the hardest. So let me just break down some of the major points. First of all, the biggest swing of this episode, and obviously the one that everything else rests upon, Mrs. Afton being the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. Here's why I went with this route. Now, first and foremost, the head of Fazbear Entertainment is the single biggest mystery that we're meant to solve at this point in the lore. The Ultimate Guide brings it up repeatedly. Who's running the show? Who is okaying these decisions? And in
Okay, so even in the guide to the game, it's asking questions like, who's in charge? Oh my god, that's crazy.
Memos, we get multiple mentions of someone manipulating things from the top down. Whoever this is, they are the person driving forward every other facet of late-stage FNAF lore here. They're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev. They're the ones relaunching the brand, building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground. So everything at the end of the timeline relies on this one singular answer. Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, an adult robot Elizabeth, like we see older versions of robot kids in the fourth closet, or Mrs. Afton. Could it be someone completely new to the franchise? Absolutely yes, but in a game with so many returning faces and repeated themes, it would be pretty random and arbitrary. So, between these two girl bosses, who then would it be? Elizabeth always wants to please her daddy, so she'd be most likely wanting to bring him to life. But then, what's Vanessa's role in all of this? Vanessa is clearly meant to be a parallel for Elizabeth. Same hair, same eyes, similar backstories, but if the main goal is getting the Afton family back together, which seems to clearly be the case in Security Breach, then there's no need for Vanessa to be involved at all. We already have Elizabeth running the show. It would also mean that we suddenly have two robot kids running around, which feels narratively repetitive and quite frankly kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton. We know next to nothing about her outside of any clues that we can get from Immortal and the Restless and Ballora's song. But what her being head of Fazbear does is make every other piece of the lore fit. Suddenly, you can have one of every other type of character. One robot kid in Gregory, one brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, one OG corpse in William, and one possessed animatronic in Mike. Narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense.
Because she has a stake.
She'd likely have some stake in the original company and all of its assets. So as Fazbear folds as a company, I suspect a lot of it would return back to her. But there was one clue that really sold me on this particular direction, and that was this right here, in the Post-it room. The big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side. That one scene shows that we have to include Mom in there somewhere, and the only place it makes sense for her to be is at the top. Now, there is one big dilemma with my interpretation of all this. The Ultimate Guide really seems to point out that the head of Fazbear doesn't want the glitch trap virus to spread. They call out one particular email in FNAF AR where the legal team calls a cease and desist to all action about scanning the circuit boards. And even in FNAF VR, we're told that the circuit boards get stolen back by the client, presumably once they realize what danger is on there, trying to stop Glitch Trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that, though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first place? Why'd they build over the FNAF 6 pizzeria? Why'd they go through an elaborate cover-up to make the possessed Vanessa an important part of the company? Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor points, number one.
I think that, I mean, it would kind of make sense. Do you need it to spread? I mean, you do need it to spread to create, like, his consciousness in the digital realm. But also, I was gonna say maybe the mother doesn't want to cause collateral damage that's unnecessary, but that would be a lie because she was connecting Remnant and harvesting it. So I don't know.
The Five Nights at Freddy's games were made by the Rogue indie developer. Here's the thing. thing. FNAF VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
It's recreating the lies told to you by the indie developer. And since Help Wanted has direct recreations of FNAFs 1 through 3, it means the games must be part of the fabrications that this developer made up. Also, all of this is heavily implied in the story of the same name, Help Wanted and Tales of the Pizzaplex, hence FNAF 1 through 3 canon games within the lore of the series. Big swing number 2, the elephant, or ghost in the room, Charlie infecting the Pizzaplex. John from the channel FNAF has made some great findings about Charlie's influence over the Pizzaplex. The cables that look like the striped arms of the puppet, the Nightmare-owned plushies that you find hidden across the Pizzaplex in weird places, the staff bots with creepy smiles and in your dreams written on the front. All of these things scream puppet. Plus, the puppet mask not
Charlie the puppet?
Blob seems to imply that Charlie's spirit exists elsewhere. She is still in play, and she has an important role, especially in Gregory's post-it room. The doors to the post-it room in the game's code are called Charlie doors. And inside, we see a bunch of lit-up nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID's Fantasy did a great theory looking at the post-it notes, concluding that the crying child / Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie. Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist. Instead of controlling one thing, she's affecting a lot of little details, foundational elements of the Pizzaplex. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in the franchise either. We've seen spirits communicating with people through physical writing in the survival logbook. So we know that this is an established means of spirit communication within this franchise. And I suspect that to some extent it might be Charlie's influence making Gregory go haywire. Which brings me then to my final and probably biggest controversy in recent FNAF history, Gregory as Patient 46, the evil robot mastermind. Now, I know when I first came out with this theory a year ago, people were mad. But here's the thing, you don't have to take my evidence points for it anymore. The recent Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY, basically goes and just outright proves it. In GGY, we find out about a boy named Gregory who's getting all the high scores in the Pizzaplex arcade machines. When therapists starts go missing, it's confirmed that GGY is the one that's working to bump them off. And when animatronics start getting corrupted by a mysterious glitch, GGY's letters are found inside the code. He even chooses the code name Dr. Rabbit, for crying out loud. But obviously, by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burntrap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why? How? Well, it's not really clear. I tend to believe that something must have happened to cause him to either lose his memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie
to wake up.
In his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage in Glamrock Freddy.
Yeah.
Not exactly sure, and I don't think we have enough clues to solve any of it yet. But it makes sense from a story perspective why he'd start off evil on Afton's side and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends,
wow.
Congratulations, we are on page 40. 22,000 words of FNAF, baby. Practically just wrote myself a Tales of the Pizzaplex short story. Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of the evidence we're given? Yeah. For me, honestly, it really does. So let's
for
be
me
honest
too.
With ourselves, the DLC will probably come out later this year and prove me completely wrong. It won't be the first time. Then comes the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless, I am so proud of this. This was a massive undertaking. And I'm so proud of our editors who have just destroyed the editing across all 4 of these installments. You guys are the best. Thank you for pushing through on 20+ minute uploads.
Yeah, dude. That was that was a spiritual experience. That was a spiritual journey. Wow. I don't know how much I was expecting going into this, because I knew that people talked about the lore being heavy and very interwoven and connected, but I was honestly just impressed the entire time. I'm impressed by the fan base. I'm impressed by these guys in particular who managed to weave it into such a cohesive manner, a cohesive story. And although like it seems as though we don't have concrete answers or solutions to a lot of these problems, the community has done the best that they can with the timelines that the game has provided and the clues that the games have provided, to piece together their own version of the FNAF lore and what really happened in its history. So it's super fascinating. I'm particularly interested in how all of the games are in order, out of order. All of the characters are not mentioned. but like purposefully so that people have to figure it out on their own. And as bits and pieces keep coming out, like they mentioned with like a DLC and other games, how the story just keeps living and evolving. I don't know, this is insane. Definitely not going to go down a rabbit hole and watch a bunch of more lore videos and like Easter egg videos just to come up with my own theories and my own thoughts on what happened, because I know that there's not just one standing solution. There's probably a lot of them out there. So thank you all for joining me, and I'm looking forward to playing Into the Pit, my last installment of FNAF for now, and then seeing how that weaves and changes the story as well. So thank y'all, and I'll see you in the next episode. See ya!